Okay. The Invoked, written by David Cave. Woods, night, 1970s. Mist rolls its way through the trees. A number of fires burn brightly within a clearing in the woods. Small groups of hippies are spread around the area, some smoking dope, others in various states of undress making love, while more dance around to the folk music being played. A hippie, late 20s, long unwashed hair, wearing bell-bottomed ripped Levi's, bare feet, enters the clearing, holding a piglet that kicks in his arms. He walks over to where an almost naked couple, Jim Wallace, 19, and Jane, 17, make love. Someone slides a black oxygen mask over the hippie's face as he raises the piglet above the unaware Jim and Jane, whose bodies writhe in union beneath him. Other members of the group crowd around the love-making couple.
Through death, we invoke life.
Through death, we invoke life. Through death, we invoke life. Through death, we invoke life.
One of the group produces a large jewel-encrusted dagger and stabs it into the animal's body, its blood spilling onto the sweaty flesh of Jim and Jane. As the pig's blood splatters over their skin, the group that surrounds them strip off what little clothing still covers them, and they fall into the growing ecstatic union of sexual abandonment below. Titles. Bedroom, morning, current day. Walls plastered with posters of rock and metal bands, Black Sabbath to Muse. Dirty washing lays over the unmade bed. A disassembled skateboard lays on the carpeted floor. What did you expect from the vaccines is loudly streaming from Spotify, knocking on the bedroom door. 70-year-old Luke Wallace, dyed black hair, baggy black pants, black flag t-shirt, sits at his PC, immersed in a chat room conversation. Luke, can't stand it. He clicks send. Livy replies, Livy, why? Luke types. Luke, too many fascists won't listen to other people's point of view. Send. Livy replies with a smiley face icon. Justine Young's vocals slide into silence, louder banging on the bedroom door. Luke, yeah? Types more. Luke, any better where you are? Send.
Lunch is going cold.
Livy, prob's worse. Need some fun. Feel like fucking hermit here.
Give me 2 minutes.
Fingers move quickly. Luke, you feel like a fucking hermit? Really? Send. Livy, haha, you know what I mean. Luke, hermits turn you on? Livy, maybe. Livy sends a winking icon.
Luke!
Luke sends a sad face icon, then types more. Luke, have to go. Talk soon. Send. Livy, definitely. Luke sends a peace sign icon. Livy replies with a kiss. He powers off the machine and exits the room. Dining room, moments later. Nicely decorated room, tasteful and middle class. Luke sits down at the oak dining table and looks at the cheese sandwich that sits in front of him. Sound of a kettle boiling in the nearby kitchen.
Mum?
Tea?
Luke picks up the sandwich and takes a bite.
Coke, please.
Mum enters the room. Jane Wallace, 59, looks much younger than her age, dressed smartly in blouse and knee-length skirt. She places a can of Coke on the table and returns to the kitchen.
It's a sandwich.
What you say, darling?
Mum enters the room again, lays a side plate with a half-eaten sandwich on the table, then takes a jacket from the back of a chair and puts it on. Mum takes a bite of her sandwich.
It's a sandwich.
Mum picks up a bag from the other chair and takes another mouthful of the sandwich.
How can a sandwich go cold?
Mum, not listening, looks at her watch.
Gotta go, sorry.
Mum kisses Luke on the head.
What time are you in tonight?
No idea.
College today?
Yeah.
Mum quick steps out of the room, front door opens.
Your father's coming round at 8. Make sure you're home, please.
Front door slams shut.
Too many fascists.
He finishes off his food, takes a large swig of Coke and exits the room. Street, day. Luke moves down the pavement on his skateboard. A denim satchel covered in marker pen scribbles, band logo patches and metal pin badges hangs from his shoulders. A battered Ford Fiesta pulls beside him and keeps pace as the side window is wound down and a black plastic water gun is aimed in Luke's direction. Danny, 25, black, shaven head, septum and lip piercings, holds the gun.
Yo, Batty boy!
Luke glances around as a spray of water hits him in the face. Luke stumbles off his skateboard, which nearly hits a wall, as laughter explodes from inside the car.
Funny, dick.
Layers.
Sure.
Peace, brother.
Danny blows Luke a kiss. Luke wipes his face as the car speeds away, picks up his board and starts to walk. Hallway. Evening. Luke enters the house, flicking on the hallway lights as he closes the front door behind him. He throws his satchel and skateboard onto the floor in front of a shoe rack that sits by the bottom of the stairs.
Mum!
The house is silent. Luke walks up the stairs. Bedroom. Moments later. Luke turns on his PC and fires up Spotify. He double clicks on a folder titled Death Metal. Immediately, music begins to play as he sits down and opens up the chat room on his monitor. We hear an electronic ping. A green light next to Livy's name denotes her online presence. Luke's fingers slide quickly over the keyboard. Luke, you there, Liv? Send. Luke takes off his trainers and throws them on the floor nearby. He pulls a can of lager from a drawer in his computer desk and cracks it open. Livy, hey, how are you? The doorbell rings downstairs. Luke ignores it. He takes a few gulps from his can, walks over to his bedroom window and looks out. A large red car he doesn't recognise is parked outside of the house. The doorbell rings again, followed by a couple of knocks. Luke walks back over to his laptop and types. Luke, bollocks. Can't talk right now, soz. The doorbell rings once more. Luke sees that the green icon next to Livy's name has now turned red. He swallows more lager, puts the half-full can down on the desk, then gets up and exits the room. Hallway, moments later. The letterbox is pushed open from the outside. Eyes stare through it and the doorbell rings once more. Luke saunters down the stairs and opens the front door. Dad, Jim Wallace, bald head, wearing smart shirt and suit jacket, informally worn on top of chinos and polished brogues, puts on his glasses and offers Luke a small package.
Happy birthday.
Luke takes the box.
My birthday was 2.5 months ago.
Dad steps into the house, half hugs his son, then takes off his coat.
Yes, sorry about that. Just got back this morning.
Where you been this time?
Paris. 3 months of cheap French wine and shit food.
Dad throws his coat over the stair banister, takes off his shoes and puts them on the shoe rack.
New motor?
Yep, the job has to have some perks. Your mum in?
No. She told me to be back for you.
Dad walks into the living room.
That's women for you.
Living room, moments later. Beautifully decorated room with thick plush carpets. Dad sits down on his expensive looking leather sofa. Luke enters holding his birthday present.
Where's the TV gone?
Mum got rid of it. Thought it would help me focus on my studies or something.
Dad takes off his socks and massages his right foot.
Fair enough, I suppose. And how about you?
Me?
How do you feel about it?
Whatever.
The front door can be heard closing. Luke exits the room, still carrying the parcel. Hallway, moments later. Mum takes off her coat.
Good day, sweetheart.
Luke heads back up the stairs.
Not really. Dad's here.
Mum kicks off her shoes.
Oh good, tea in half an hour. Come down and be sociable for a while, will you?
Luke doesn't answer and continues up the stairs. Bedroom, moments later. Placebo plays as Luke checks out a skateboard website. A notification pops up on his monitor. Livy sent you a message. Luke instantly checks into the chat room. Livy, you okay? Luke picks up the half-empty can of lager that sits on the desk and takes a drink. Luke, yeah, thanks, you. Send. Livy sends a crying icon. Luke, huh? Send. Livy's icon turns red. Luke hits the keys quickly once more. Luke, what's up? No reply.
Fuck's sake.
Luke looks at the parcel that sits on his bed. Leaving his PC on, he moves over to his bed and begins to unwrap it. Living room, evening. Dad still sits on the sofa, his socks now back on his feet. Mum kneels in front of a large gas fire that sits within a lavish marble fireplace.
He misses you, you know.
Dad finishes the cup of tea and puts the cup on the small side table next to him.
I miss him. What can I do though? I try and get over when I can, but this bloody job is driving me crazy lately.
Mum pulls the hairband away from her ponytail and lets her wild brown hair drop free.
Paris, Brussels, Montreal, LA. Must be awful, yeah.
Living out of a suitcase isn't my idea of fun, believe me.
Mum stands up.
Look, I get your career dictates what you can and can't do most of the time, but Luke needs his dad around more.
I do what I can.
Well, he's not going to be around much longer, is he?
It's not 76 anymore, Jane. I can't just leave my responsibilities on the shelf and go party.
Your responsibility is your son.
Christ, I know that. But as you so rightly pointed out, Luke will be gone soon. He'll do us proud. You know he will.
I hope so.
Dad puts his arm around Mum to console her.
He will, I promise. We've done our best for him given the circumstances. He knows that. Now it's time for him to take some of that responsibility on himself.
The door opens and in steps Luke holding a top-of-the-range Swiss Army knife. He tries to hide his excitement and look nonchalant, but a wry smile indicates his delight with the gift.
Thanks, Dad. It's pretty cool.
Dad pulls himself up from the sofa and opens his arms.
Hey, I try and stay up with the kids, you know.
Luke rolls his eyes at his dad's lack of cool. Shaking his head, he embraces his dad.
You boys.
Dad winks at Mum as she exits the room. Mind's blue room, evening. Aged hands, yellow tobacco-stained fingers, and long chipped fingernails that extend from robed sleeves carry a large rusted brass goblet down a corridor, through a plastic curtain, then into a room lit both with blue light and candlelight. The person stops. Through death we invoke life. The goblet is tilted and thick black red blood falls. Dining room, evening. Red wine is poured into a glass. Dad, Mum and Luke sit around the dinner table eating tea.
How's school going then?
I don't go to school.
Well, college then.
Alright.
Just alright?
Luke doesn't answer.
More wine?
Better not. Up early in the morning. You found yourself a girlfriend yet?
Jim.
I'm only asking.
You two are a fine example of why I shouldn't be in a relationship, don't you think?
The vibration of Luke's mobile phone that lays on the table next to him breaks the silence. Luke picks it up and glances at the illuminated screen. Livy sent you a message.
Do you have to do that at the dinner table?
Luke picks up the phone and stands up.
Where do you think you're going?
Luke turns around and stares at his mum.
Well, if I'm not allowed it at the dinner table, then I'm going somewhere where I am allowed it.
Luke walks out of the room. Dad gets up to follow him.
Just leave him. Finish your tea.
Dad sits back down and reluctantly carries on eating. Back garden, moments later. Luke stands under a tree at the end of a perfectly manicured garden, reading Livy's message. Livy, I'm sorry. Luke types the keys on his phone. Luke, sorry, what for? Send. Livy, everything. Livy quickly sends Luke a heart-shaped icon. Livy, you fancy meeting? Luke, when? Send. Livy, when are you free? Luke, dunno, tomorrow? Send. Livy sends a smiley face icon. Livy, wonderful. Luke, where you want to meet? Send. Livy, live in Littlesford, just outside of Boscombe. Meet me there. Luke, Boscombe? Send. Livy, if that's okay. Luke, good for me. Send. Luke, what you look like? Send. A moment passes before a picture comes through. A full body shot up to the neck. The figure wears a lightweight silky dressing gown. The gown has fallen partly open, revealing a glimpse of black knickers and bra. Luke is slightly taken aback. Please though. Definitely please. Livy, sorry. Meant to send you this one. Another picture comes through. A headshot this time. Livy smiling. Flowing dark hair. Huge eyes and freckles, nose piercing. Beautiful girl in her early 20s.
Sweet.
Luke, don't apologise, LOL. What time you want to meet? Send. Livy, 6, okay. There's only one row of shops here. Meet you at the bus stop. Luke, I'll be there. Send. Livy sends a smiling icon. Luke, look forward to it. Send. Livy sends 3 heart icons. Luke, smiling, heads back towards the house. Hallway, moments later. As Luke enters the hallway, his dad emerges from the dining room.
I have to go now.
Dad puts on his shoes.
You alright?
Luke steps back down the stairs, slipping his phone into his pocket as he goes.
I'm fine, Dad.
Dad puts on his coat.
Listen, I was thinking, I have some time off soon. Why don't you come over for a few days? We can spend some time together.
I'd love to,
Yeah?
if I could. Too much work to do at the minute, though.
Dad opens the front door.
The offer's always there, okay?
Yeah, I know. See you later.
Certainly will. Love you.
Dad waits for a response. Luke pulls the Swiss Army knife from his pocket.
Thanks again for this.
No problem.
Luke starts to ascend the stairs.
Luke,
Luke stops and turns around.
listen to your mother, won't you? She knows what's best.
Luke rolls his eyes and waves sarcastically at Dad. Dad winks at his son, then exits the house, closing the door behind him. Luke ascends the stairs. Bus. Early evening. Luke sits next to his skateboard on the back seat of the bus, listening to music through his mobile phone. He stares out of the window, framing the inner city graffiti-ridden urban landscape along with the metal soundtrack that pulses through his skull. Luke closes his eyes as the bus pulls into a stop. The bus pulls away and the headphones are pulled quickly from his ears. Luke opens his eyes to be confronted by a smiling Danny.
Yo, bro, how's it hanging?
Danny raises his right hand. Luke smiles and gives him a high five.
Okay, dude, you?
Danny sits down next to Luke.
Can't complain, life's pretty sweet just now. What are you listening to?
Danny takes the headphones from Luke's lap and raises them to his ears. He talks extra loud to compensate for the loud tunes.
Rammstein, choice! I seen him last year supporting System. Fucking A1, man.
He lays the phone back on Luke's lap.
Where you heading, bro?
Meeting a friend.
Of the female variety.
He winks at Luke.
Definitely female, yeah. She lives somewhere around your way. Livy...
Luke realises he doesn't even know her surname.
What's she look like?
Long black hair, nose pierced.
That reminds me of every bitch I know, fam. She go to Moors?
Dunno.
Livy Taylor, maybe? She was a few years above me at the Manor. That was, 8 years ago. Bit of a babe. I heard she had some friggin' crazy parties at her folks' house up on the hill. I thought she moved when her pa died, though.
Luke notices the bus passing a sign that reads, "Please drive carefully through Boscombe Village."
I prefer the older woman, do we, bro?
Nah, she's just a friend.
Well, if your friend ever fancies a bit of a freeway, I'm your man.
Danny winks at Luke.
Look, I love you lots, mate, but I don't love you that much.
Oh, come on, man. You're my brother from another mother.
Luke shakes his head, smiling.
Whatevs.
You can't blame a bro for trying, eh?
Danny half stands to look where they are.
I'm off here.
He holds out his hand, which Luke grips in a tribal shake.
And remember, if you can't be good,
They hug as the bus stops.
Be a twat.
Danny jumps off the bus and gives Luke the thumbs up. Luke responds with his middle finger, then inserts his headphones as the bus moves away. High Street. Later. The indicating bus pulls into the stop and comes to a halt outside of Boscombe Village Store, an old vintage-style building located in the dead centre of the village. Skateboard in hand, Luke jumps off the vehicle and sits down on the empty bench behind the bus stop as the bus moves away. He pulls his mobile out of his jacket pocket. The time reads 18:07. Luke looks around at the autumnal scenario that surrounds him, noticing the row of empty cars that are parked a little further down the street. Laughter nearby. 3 teenage girls walking towards him, none of them Livy. They stare at him, giggling and chatting under their breath as they pass by. Luke checks his phone once more. 18:09. When Luke looks up, he's shocked to see an old man now seated next to him. The old man, 72, is unshaven and is dressed in sandals, loose cotton trousers and an old biker's leather jacket. He smells of drink and perspiration.
Delightful evening.
Luke nods and then turns his attention once more to his mobile, scrolling down until he accidentally comes to the picture of Livy in her underwear. He quickly scrolls back up to the picture of Livy's face.
Not just the evening that's delightful, eh, boy?
The old man cackles and elbows Luke in the ribs. He leans uncomfortably close to Luke's face. Luke puts his phone to sleep mode, then stares at the old man, not knowing what to say.
Girlfriend?
No.
The old man giggles.
I'm acquainted with most folks around here, stranger.
If that's true, then you'd know who she was then, wouldn't you?
He gestures to his phone.
Oh, but I do, lad. Lives over by the mines, she does.
Luke looks unimpressed.
Is that right?
Of course. They've been closed since 76.
Yeah?
Accidents, they said. Not safe no more, they said.
The old man, eyes glittering, once more leans in towards Luke. His tone is conspiratorial.
Bullshit. That's what I say.
Luke is now clearly wanting to get away. He stands up, looking for Livy.
I'm really sorry, mate, but I've got...
Stay in one place long enough, and you get to see stuff. Stuff other folks don't want you to see.
An old 4x4 pulls into the bus stop a little way off and beeps its horn. Luke looks towards the direction of the vehicle.
Is that for you? Is that for you?
Luke looks back at the old man, but he's gone. He notices him a little further down the road, talking to the group of teenage girls. He begins to walk towards the vehicle. The electric window of the 4x4 slide half down, and Olivia Lucas, 68, wearing sunglasses, dyed blonde hair, bright rouge and lipstick plastered over her yellowed skin, smiles at Luke. She wears a cream blouse, unbuttoned to a point that reveals a little too much cleavage for a woman of her age, and neatly pressed trousers.
It's Luke, isn't it?
Luke moves closer to the 4x4.
Livy's friend?
He bends slightly and looks at her.
Yeah.
Well, hello.
Hi.
Olivia slides the electric window fully down.
Sorry, I'm Livy's mum. She sends her apologies, but she's running a little late and has asked me to pick you up. She sent you a message.
Luke takes his phone from his jacket pocket once more.
Not got anything.
The signal's not great around these parts.
Olivia pushes the passenger side door open just as Luke's mobile beeps. Livy sent you a message. Luke opens the message. Livy, at Dad's, running late. Have asked Mother to meet you. Wait at mine. Sorry. Luke gets into the car.
There you go. Talk about good timing.
An epitome of dissolution, Olivia lowers her sunglasses onto her nose and holds out her hand.
Olivia, pleased to meet you.
Luke shakes her bony hand, noticing the dark, circular scar on Olivia's right eyelid. Luke lays his skateboard in the footwell in front of him and clicks his seatbelt in as Olivia replaces her sunglasses and U-turns the car. Moments later. The 4x4 leaves the village. A sign on the road reads, "Thank you for driving with consideration," through Boscombe Village and onto a quiet country road.
So, how long have you and Liv been friends?
About 3 months.
It figures. She's into all that black clothing and depressing music too.
Only the steady hum of the car's engine can be heard for a while. Luke lifts his earphones to his ears.
You mind?
Plug it into the player if you want. I was only joking about the music. I'm used to it by now.
Luke plugs the jack from the car's system into his phone and turns on the stereo. Rammstein blasts out loudly. Olivia turns the volume down.
Not that used to it.
The 4x4 turns off into a single-lane side road. Luke looks up to the huge house that sits silhouetted against the skyline, some way in the distance. House, later. The grand house looms over the 4x4 as it pulls up on the gravel drive in front of the huge oak wooden door. The sound of squealing pigs can be heard as Olivia and Luke, holding his skateboard, step out of the car. Olivia opens the car boot and has no problem lifting out 4 shopping bags full of groceries.
What's that noise?
Freedom, dear boy. You're in the countryside now, you know.
Olivia places the bags on the floor in front of the door as she unlocks and opens it. Luke places his skateboard on the ground and steps back to pick up the bags.
Sorry, I'll get these for you.
He attempts to lift all 4 bags, but because of their weight, he's struggling. Olivia picks up 2 of the bags.
That's very chivalrous of you.
She enters the house. Luke picks up the other 2 bags and follows her in. Hallway, moments later. A spacious hallway with high ceilings, mainly wood-panelled walls, a tired decor. Directly in front of the entrance, a grand stairway leads up to an open landing. Not much furniture in the hallway aside from a faded sideboard and a rather impressive grandfather clock that stands in an alcove at the end of the room. Olivia drops the bags onto the tiled floor and throws her keys onto the sideboard.
Drop them there if you don't mind.
Luke gently places the bags on the floor.
Would you like a drink?
I'm fine, thanks.
Olivia gestures to a nearby oak door.
The sitting room's there.
Thanks. Are you sure you're okay with the bags?
Certain.
Olivia picks up all 4 bags as Luke heads towards the living room. Living room, moments later. A huge room with a high ceiling. Top half of the walls are wallpapered with dark green velvet paper. Bottom half wood panelling all around the room. A thick plush carpet, stained at points, is covered by a Persian rug in front of the open fireplace. Light faded paintings hang randomly on the walls. One gilt-framed landscape leans against the wall at the far end of the room, the empty space on the wall above marked by the shadow of a much smaller frame. Enormous, antique-looking patio doors, yellowing net curtains covering them, take up the entire wall at the other end. The only sound, an ugly brass ticking clock that stands alone on the mantelpiece. The room smells of stale smoke and is crying out for some serious TLC. Luke lowers himself onto the worn leather settee that faces the fireplace. He looks at the clock, 19:20, then pulls his phone out of his pocket. It reads, "No signal." So he raises it in the air, moving it around in the hopes of finding a connection.
You'll be lucky.
A little startled, he turns around to see Olivia, standing with a silver tray with a teapot and a single teacup on it in the doorway. Olivia places the tray on the settee next to Luke, grabs a small table from the other side of the room and places it next to the settee.
You'd think we'd get decent phone signal up here, wouldn't you?
She lifts the tray and puts it on the table, then pours tea into the teacup.
How'd you like it?
Just black, please.
Olivia pours milk from a small jug into one of the cups.
Damn, forgot the sugar. Give me a moment.
She disappears out of the room. Luke stands up and lifts his phone once more, moving over to the patio doors, attempting again to get a signal. No luck. He tries to open one of the doors, but it's locked. Hearing the tip-tapping of Olivia's shoes moving back towards the room, Luke slips his phone back into his pocket and sips back down. Olivia enters holding a sugar bowl and a crystal glass tumbler filled with whiskey and ice. She places the sugar bowl on the silver tray and sits down in the large high-backed chair next to the settee. Olivia takes a large mouthful of whiskey and places a glass on the table.
What a day. Something a little harder for me, I'm afraid.
She goes to drop a sugar cube in Luke's tea, but Luke moves his hand over the cup.
Not for me.
Luke looks at Luke's hand for a moment. Olivia, looks at Luke's hand for a moment, then drops the sugar cubes into her whiskey instead. She then pulls a packet of cigarettes and a lighter from down the side of the chair and opens the packet and offers one to Luke.
No thanks.
We are the healthy one, aren't we?
Olivia pops a cigarette between her lips and lights up. She takes a drag, then blows the smoke out into the air above.
God, I needed that.
Luke tries to waft the smoke away from him.
It's a filthy habit, isn't it?
She stubs the cigarette out on the fireplace beside her and throws it into the fireplace.
You'll be sorry to hear that Liv smokes like a trooper.
Up to her, I suppose. Where does her dad live?
Her dad?
She said she was at her dad's.
Oh yes, of course.
Olivia gets up and, pulling a key out of her pocket, walks over to the patio doors, unlocks them and pushes one of the doors open.
Not exactly sure where he is at the moment, but not too far away if Liv has gone to see him. Him and I don't really get on, and well, you don't want to hear about our problems.
Olivia pulls the net curtain aside to allow the last of the sunlight into the room.
Be a darling and fetch me some logs for the fire, would you? They're stacked against the shed.
Of course.
Luke exits the room as Olivia kneels in front of the fireplace and starts to pack kindling from a bucket onto the fire. Garden, moments later. Luke heads towards a dilapidated wooden shed that stands in front of a wooded area of ground. He takes in a lungful of the fresh, crisp air as he scans what must be at least 20 acres of mainly overgrown and untended woodland and fields that surround the property. Reaching the outbuilding, he circles it, catching sight of the pile of chopped logs that stand against the side of the ramshackle construction. A large axe lays next to the logs. Luke sits down on the pile of logs and pulls out his mobile phone. A single line of his signal bar denotes some connection in the open air, so Luke quickly starts to type into his messenger. Luke, where are you, Liv? Send. Luke looks through his fingers at the late evening sun that shines down, illuminating the yellow, dry grass fields and leafless trees that surround him. No answer is forthcoming, so he types another message, this time to Danny. Luke, hey Dan, quick question. When did Livy Tyler's dad die? Send. He stands up and walks around to the front of the shed. It's locked with a small padlock. Dan's typing. Luke attempts to look through the damaged wooden slats into the shed, but he's unable to see anything. Dan, 8, maybe 10 years ago. Could have been a mum. Luke sits down on the pile of logs. Dan is typing. Dan, why?
I'm waiting.
Luke is startled by the silhouetted figure of Olivia who stands over him. He notices that she's changed into more casual attire, dark brown leggings and a thick grey woolly jumper, finished off with a pair of black Wellington boots. She looks more than a little absurd still wearing the colourful makeup.
The wood?
Oh, sorry. I was just trying...
Luke puts his phone back in his pocket and starts to pick up an armful of logs.
You'll be pleased to know that Liv's been in touch. She said pass on her apologies, but her train is delayed and she'll be later than she expected.
She rang?
We have a landline here. Can't rely on those new-fangled things all the time, can we?
Olivia loads more logs into Luke's arms.
I can run you back to the village if you don't want to wait here for her.
She picks up some logs and loads them into a nearby bucket.
No, it's fine, thanks. I'll wait.
Olivia picks up the basket.
Whatever you want to do, sweetheart.
They head back into the house. Living room, moments later. Olivia drops the basket full of logs onto the fireplace. Luke follows suit and drops his log load next to the basket.
So how did you two meet?
Online.
Olivia, squatting down, puts a few logs on the fire.
Everything seems to revolve around technology these days, doesn't it?
She gestures towards a box of matches that sits on the mantelpiece.
Would you?
Luke grabs the matches and hands them to her. Olivia strikes a match and lights the kindling.
When I was your age, things were so much simpler, so much more innocent.
A dull smoke rises from the burning sticks.
You gave to the earth and it rewarded you in return.
Pardon?
Olivia stands up as the fire starts to blaze.
Oh, nothing. Just rambling. She's a strange girl, don't you think?
Livy,
Who else?
this will be the first time we've actually met.
Oh, well then I'm sure you'll understand when she gets here.
Olivia pats the leather settee.
Sit back down and watch the fire for me, won't you? You must be hungry. I'll get some supper.
No, I'm okay. Don't worry.
Olivia strides out of the room, leaving Luke's words floating in the air. Luke pulls out his phone once more. 20:02. He notices that the gilt-framed landscape that was leaning against the wall has been rehung in the empty space above. The last rays of sunshine suffused the room in surreal golden light. Living room. Evening. The arms on the brass clock read 9:04. The silver tray sits on the wooden table next to the settee. On the tray is an assortment of sandwiches, crisps, finger snacks and cakes, all arranged beautifully. Luke sits on the settee eating a sandwich. A small plate covered in crumbs is balanced on his lap. Olivia sits on the chair smoking a cigarette.
You live with your parents, I take it?
Just my mum.
The women are always the ones left to cope.
My dad still visits us. He works away.
Olivia stares hypnotically at the burning end of the cigarette she holds. Living room, evening. Flashback, 1983. Olivia screams as the tip of a lit cigarette is navigated towards her right eyeball. Living room, evening, present day. The ash from the cigarette tip drops onto the arm of the leather chair.
Miss Taylor?
Olivia is pulled from her faraway thoughts. Using her hand, she wipes the ash quickly onto the floor, then throws what's left of her cigarettes onto the fireplace. She takes another drink of the whiskey and replaces the glass on the table.
Taylor, where did you hear that name?
Olivia bends down and picks up a few more logs.
Someone I know who knew Livy said.
They were wrong. Her name is Lucas.
Olivia places the logs onto the fire and watches them ignite.
Virginia Olivia Lucas.
Oh, so Livy's a middle name.
She was named after me.
Olivia stands up. She looks suddenly fatigued.
I'm sorry, but I'm feeling a little tired. I'm going to have a lay down. Livy's room is up the stairs right along the landing. Then second door on the right. Feel free to go and entertain yourself in there until she comes back.
Are you okay? Do you need me to get you anything?
Olivia leans over and strokes Luke's cheek.
Such a sweet boy. I'm just dandy. A little tired, that's all.
She exits the room. Luke listens to her footsteps ascending the stairs, then stands up and walks over to the framed painting that was rehung on the wall. He studies the faded landscape, an empty beach, a grey and sullen calm sea stretching out into the distance, its horizon meeting the dark clouds, enveloping a nothingness, blurring the lines between land, sea and sky, then walks over to the patio doors and twists the handle. The door refuses to open. Luke presses his body against the wood and pushes hard, but the door is locked once more. Luke walks back to where the whiskey sits and picks the half-full tumbler up. He pulls his mobile out of his pocket and looks again at Dan's last message. Dan, why?
Fuck it.
Luke drains what's left of Olivia's drink, then exits the room. Hallway, moments later, Luke wanders down the hallway and climbs the stairs. The house is so quiet he can hear the tick-tock of the grandfather clock that stands at the end of the hallway below. Reaching the top of the stairs, he heads towards Livy's room. He pushes the door and enters. Livy's bedroom, moments later. Luke closes the door behind him and then turns and looks at the huge room that stands before him. A large four-poster bed, made up immaculately, dominates the space, surrounded by not much furniture at all. A small writing table and chair sit next to the window. A large wooden box placed against the wall opposite it, and a freestanding mirror that leans against another door in one of the corners have all seen better days. The walls are plain wood panelled with a few metal band posters dotted neatly around. The floor, polished wood boarding. Luke walks over to the window and looks out over the grounds. The view stretches quite away, and he can just see a few houses that signal the start of the nearby village a few miles off. He notices the large, rusting nails that have been hammered into the window frame, sealing the window closed. He turns and walks over to the writing desk, sitting down in the wooden chair next to it. He runs a finger over the empty surface of the desk and examines the grey dust that gathers there. Luke pulls the nearest drawer open to reveal a small portable CD player and a bunch of discs. He lifts out a couple of the CDs, Marilyn Manson and Rob Zombie, still in their shrink wrap. He pulls out a handful more, most of which are also unopened. He replaces the CDs in the drawer and closes it. Luke opens the opposite drawer and pulls out a dusty framed photograph of Livy, the same image of her face that she sent him that very morning. Underneath the frame sits an assortment of other photographs, semi-naked pictures of Livy's body, face obscured or missing in all of them. He replaces them in the drawer but places the framed picture back on the tabletop. He walks over to the large box on the opposite side of the room and opens it. Inside is jammed with vinyl records, a mixture of the 1960s and 70s music, Dylan, The Doors, Zappa, that all seem to have been well played. The sound of loud pig squeals from outside pulls Luke away from his observations. He closes the wooden box and walks back over to the window. Peering out, he sees the door to the dilapidated wooden shed being pushed from the inside. Unable to make out where the sound is coming from, he quickly exits the room. Garden. Moments later, Luke enters the garden from the side of the house and quickly approaches the shed. Shed. Moments later. As he enters the shed, he's stopped in his tracks by Olivia using a broom to sweep a pile of sawdust over a freshly stained patch of blood on the ground. She's removed her jumper and wears a faded white t-shirt which reveals the shape of her sagging breasts underneath. Luke notices the cluster of dark circular scars that stretch across the skin on her arms, but he can't keep his eyes from sliding to her prominent dark nipples poking through the thin t-shirt.
Pigs.
What?
Olivia continues to sweep.
Bloody pigs.
Olivia leans the broom against the shed wall, walks over to where a dirty and stained sheet lays crumpled in one corner of the building and pulls it back. Underneath lays the carcasses of half a dozen dead piglets, covered in blood. Next to the carcasses sits a large blood-stained kitchen knife. Luke moves to inspect the scene more closely as Olivia takes the broom and continues to sweep.
We can't keep them outside because they cause havoc.
Luke touches the crusted dried blood that's caked upon the dead animals. Their throats have been slit halfway around their necks.
And obviously we can't keep them inside either.
It's sick just killing them like that, though.
Olivia places the broom in a metal drum nearby.
My dear boy, we are all born into this world a sinner, and we leave it a sinner. Only the strongest will survive, and those that don't may as well submit themselves to a greater cause.
The greater...
Cover them back up. Cover them back over, will you? The smell can become quite offensive after a while.
Luke throws the sheet back over the lifeless animals. Olivia picks the shed padlock up from the surface of a nearby woodworm-riddled chest of drawers. They exit the shed and Olivia locks the door.
You're not squeamish, are you?
Luke doesn't answer as they head back into the house. Hallway. Moments later. Luke and Olivia enter the house through the front door. Luke studies the dry blood on his fingertips.
I would have thought seeing a few dead things wouldn't faze a young man these days. What with the internet and everything, you must have seen far worse things than that.
Dead things?
A figure of speech. I'll go and get you something to clean up with. Just wait here a moment.
Olivia struts off towards the kitchen. Luke is left alone in the company of the ticking grandfather clock. After a moment, he walks slowly down the corridor and over to the alcove where the huge wooden clock stands. He looks up at its metal face, noticing that it tells the wrong time. He notices a dark, dampened shadow that runs vertically down the wallpaper behind the clock. Luke looks more closely at the shadow before hearing footsteps moving closer behind him. He steps back from the wall and pretends to study the clock once more as Olivia steps beside him.
Monstrous, isn't it? Here.
Olivia hands Luke a dirty rag.
Thanks.
Luke attempts to remove the dried blood from his fingers.
It's not that bad. The sound is quite soothing.
It's been in the family for so long now that I feel tired to it.
Luke looks at his hands still smeared in dried blood.
If you don't mind, I'll go and have that rest that we're supposed to be having.
No, of course not.
I'm sure Livy won't be long now. Just help yourself around the house.
She takes the rag from Luke.
And thanks
What for?
for keeping a lonely lady company.
Olivia heads up the stairs. Luke waits until Olivia has entered the bedroom, then moves back around to the grandfather's clock to inspect the wall behind it once more. He runs his finger lightly against the blackened shadow mark, tracing an indent against it as he goes. Reaching the apparent corner of the indent, about 1 metre in height, he gently pushes against the wallpaper. His finger goes right through, hitting the wooden surface behind it. Luke pulls his finger out, leaving a small hole as he does. Luke pulls his Swiss Army penknife out of his pocket and inserts it into the finger hole in the wallpaper. Carefully, he slices down a few inches where the shadow mark runs. Then, from the corner, slices across another few inches. He pulls the resulting flap of paper away from the wall to see a gap that separates the wall from what looks like a small door. Luke's investigations are cut short by Olivia's muffled cries that trail from a room above. He replaces the knife in his pocket, then follows the sound up the stairs and stops outside Olivia's bedroom door. As her small animalistic cries continue, Luke notices that the door is slightly ajar. He looks inside. Olivia lays on the bed, sheet over her open legs, gently masturbating. She pulls at her t-shirt, sliding it over her chest, allowing her scarred breasts to fall over to the side of her ribcage. She continues to pleasure herself more urgently now as she reaches to the side of the bed and takes hold of the bloodstained rag, rubbing it against her excited, leathery breasts. Luke is mesmerised, part disgusted, part turned on, as he watches this scene but can't pull his attention away from Olivia. Suddenly she turns and opens her eyes, looking right at Luke, but just as quickly he pulls his body away from the door as she climaxes in a loud, painful scream. Panicking, Luke retreats away from the door and down the stairs as hastily but quietly as he can. He stops for a moment at the bottom of the stairs, calculating the next move in his head, then swiftly jogs over to the front door. He opens the door and steps outside. Light is fading as he looks around on the ground for his skateboard.
Looking for this?
Luke turns around to face a smiling, half-naked Olivia, who swings the skateboard powerfully around to connect with Luke's head. Woods, night, 1970s. An array of tents are pitched in between the trees. A group of hippies dressed in colourful baggy attire surround a tent from which the breathless screams of giving birth escape. A final scream of pain echoes around the woods before a moment of silence, then cries of despair. A male hippie exits the tent, holding something wrapped in a bloody cloth. He shakes his head as he walks away. The group of hippies follow him into the woods, where a fire burns as the sound of crying from inside the tent becomes uncontrollable. Skateboard park, night. A street lamp illuminates the graffiti art that decorates the bowl of the skateboard park. Danny sits against the metal fence that surrounds the top of the skateboard ramps. Legs resting on his board, he smokes a small joint. He watches half a dozen lads boarding up and down the ramps, attempting various tricks, twists and flips. His mobile phone rings in his pocket. He takes it out and answers.
Yeah? Oh, hi, Mrs. W, what's up?
Danny throws his joint butt over his shoulder.
I seen him earlier, yeah. I think he was heading for the Taylor place.
Danny stands up and flips his board into his hand.
Sure thing, no problem. Bye.
Danny puts his phone back in his pocket and walks over to the edge of the ramp.
Joe!
One of the skateboarding lads, Joe, skates up the ramp, flips over the top, grabbing his board in the process, then lands a few feet away from Danny.
Lend us your wheels for an hour, yeah?
Joe pulls out a set of keys from his pocket and throws them to Danny. Danny duly catches them.
What's up?
Nothing, bro. See you soon.
No.
Joe throws his skateboard back down onto the floor, then pushes off down the ramp. Carrying his skateboard, Danny exits the park. Dark room, night. Dry, crusted blood streaks down Luke's forehead as he slowly returns to consciousness, to be met with the sound of dripping water that reverberates within the part stone, part brick-walled room. A single rotted wooden door hangs in one corner of the room, but apart from that, there's no windows and no other means of an entrance or exit. A near burnt-out candle is the only light source that flickers and reflects against the bare metal frame bed onto which he's tied. Each limb is roped tightly to its corresponding bedpost. He tries to sit up, but the rope that holds him is tied too tight for his attempts at escape.
Hello? Hello?
His voice trails off into the nothingness of the room. Service station, night. A solitary customer fills up the tank of his car as Danny stands at the service station window chatting to the older but very pretty cashier, Chelsea. He rolls a spliff as he tries in vain to chat her up.
You never been to Trent Roxanne? I can't believe that a chick as lit as you doesn't know it.
I do, but it was called tribal dance in my day, way before your time.
No way, you're not that much older.
Chelsea laughs at Danny's smooth talk. Danny grins a goofy but nevertheless endearing grin.
Afraid so. That was over 10 years ago. I've got 2 little ones now.
No way, shit.
The customer comes and stands behind Danny, waiting to pay for his petrol.
85 pence.
Danny finishes the building of the spliff and lights it up.
You what?
For the papers?
Danny looks round at the customer who's given him the evil eye.
Oh, yeah.
Danny digs into his pocket and throws a £1 coin onto the metal tray of the service desk window. He gives Chelsea a wink.
Keep the change.
He stares at Chelsea's name tag.
Chelsea.
Yeah, that's the one.
Danny exhales smoke as he turns around. The customer wafts it away in disapproval.
2 kids. No way.
Danny's grin broadens into a smile.
Milf.
Dark room, night. Luke attempts to reshape his hand, pushing it together to try and make it slight enough to slip through the loop that restrains it. Twisting and twisting it, he only manages to cut the skin at his wrist, the blood dripping onto the filthy mattress he lays on.
Is anyone there? Help me!
His cries for mercy appear to go unnoticed, as once more the dripping of water is the only reply. The sound of footsteps moving closer stop behind the door. Luke strains against his restraints, desperate to see who might be there. An eye looks at him through a hole in the rotted wood before the footsteps move away once more.
Olivia? Miss Lucas? Don't leave me here!
Luke thrashes his body around on the bed in frustration, attempting to free himself.
Why are you doing this to me? I haven't done anything to you. I haven't done anything!
Slowly, his protests give way to barely stifled sobbing. House. Night. Danny pulls the Ford Fiesta up behind the 4x4 that sits outside the house, turns off the engine and gets out. With daylight long gone and no illumination coming from the house at all, it's difficult to even see where he's going. He takes out his mobile, turns on the torch before approaching the door and ringing the bell. No answer, so he raps hard on the door. Silence once more. Holding his phone aloft, he moves around the side of the house, then to the rear. Danny shines his torch around the open space. Onto the patio doors of the house, the piles of logs stacked up against the shed. The axe is missing. Then onto the shed itself. One of the shed doors is open, so Danny walks over and enters. Shed. Moments later. Scanning the nearby ground with his torch, he sees the stained sheet that lays piled up in the corner. He goes over and pulls the sheet back to find the remains of the slaughtered piglets that lay underneath and the blooded kitchen knife.
Nice.
Danny takes the kitchen knife, throws the sheet back over the remains, then turns around using the torchlight to illuminate the set of drawers that stand in the opposite corner. He walks over and opens a random door. He takes out a pile of framed photographs, all of the frames in various states of disintegration with the panels of glass cracked or smashed, and all of the pictures within, light, faded images of babies. Danny replaces them in the drawer. Holding the knife, he exits the shed. Garden, moments later. Danny moves over to the patio doors and tries the door handle, but it's locked, so turns off his torch, puts his phone in his pocket, then uses the kitchen knife to try and prise the door open. As he pushes the knife back and forth, the blade snaps between the two doors. Retrieving what's left of the damaged knife, Danny places it in his jacket pocket and returns to the shed, where he picks up a decent-sized log from the pile. Returning to the patio doors, he uses one end of the log to smash a pane of glass set in the door. He throws the log on the floor and reaches inside to try to unlock it. Unable to open the door from the inside, he stands back.
Fuck it. If you can't be good.
He gives the door a few powerful kicks and the wood easily breaks away from the lock. Danny pushes the door ajar and enters. House. Moments later, inside the house is deadly silent. Danny moves slowly through the front room and out into the hallway. The tick-tock of the grandfather clock appears absurdly loud in this silence. Danny ascends the stairs. Moving from door to door, he opens the unlocked ones and takes a look inside, but finds nothing unusual. The last door he opens is that of Livy's room. Once more, noticing nothing out of the ordinary.
This is fucking crazy.
He's just about to close the door when he notices Luke's skateboard leaning up against the wall. Danny enters the room and picks the skateboard up, noticing the bloodied marks on the plastic. He replaces it against the wall, then exits the room and descends the stairs. Nearly at the foot of the stairs, Danny hears a key being inserted into the lock of the front door. He surveys the space around him and, as quickly and quietly as possible, runs over to the alcove where the grandfather clock stands and tucks himself behind the far side of the clock. The front door opens.
Hello? Who's there?
Danny instinctively pulls out the damaged kitchen knife as Olivia enters the house, locking the door behind her.
Virginia, is this one of your silly games?
Danny pushes himself lower and closer into the wall, brushing the loose flap of wallpaper as he does so. Olivia strides forward and straight up the stairs. Danny pushes himself up slowly into a standing position before noticing the wood panelling behind the loose flap of wallpaper next to him. Pulling the wallpaper further away from the wall, he uncovers the small door that's hidden away behind the clock. Danny slides the kitchen knife into the gap between the door and its frame, then pushes it gently until there's enough space for him to slide his fingers into the gap between the door and its frame.
Your father will hear about this. Do you hear me, Virginia?
He works the door backwards and forwards, dust and plaster coming away until it gives way to his pressure and opens just enough for him to slide his body through. Passageway, moments later. Once inside, Danny pulls the small door closed as much as he can and turns to inspect his surroundings. A string of dim and yellowed electric bulbs, half light the narrow passageway that extends way beyond his sight, heading downwards in front of him. The floor of the passageway is formed by way of bricks, laid down randomly into the earth, and the walls made up of sheets of plasterboard, chipboard, corrugated iron sheets, and wooden planks. Danny, kitchen knife still in hand, wanders tentatively down into the blackness ahead. The further he gets, the more attempted construction of the passageway gives way to an earthly ground and natural stone walls. The row of bulbs continue to light his direction forward, so Danny obediently follows. Dark room. Later. The sound of a dark creaking open of a door creaking open brings Luke to his senses. As the candle has now burnt out, the only light available comes in from the passageway, but it's so dim it's impossible to make out the identity of the person entering the room. Scraping footsteps move over to where Luke is held, then the rough skin of a hand brushes his cheek gently. Someone mounts the bed, legs kneeling on either side of Luke's waist.
Why are you keeping me here?
The person starts to lick Luke's face, tongue moving down to his chest, then stomach.
What are you doing?
No verbal answer comes his way, but he feels the buttons of his trousers being opened. Luke begins to struggle, moving his hips around, up and down, back and forth, attempting to interrupt the attentions of his attacker.
No. No! No! Please! No!
His effort comes to no avail as hands grip the top of his trousers tightly and easily rip the buttons apart.
No! Get the fuck off me!
He feels his trousers start to be pulled down as he continues to fight against it.
Please, don't do this! No!
As Luke shouts in defiance, a hand strikes his face hard, and for a moment, everything goes still. Passageway, moments later. The further Danny walks down into the darkness, the more his eyes adjust to the environment around him, and the more he becomes aware that he's in an underground mine. The dripping of water down the corroded, part-built brick walls and wooden joists echo through the air as Danny sees various unlit smaller passageways leading off to either side. He continues to follow along the main passageway deeper into the earth.
No!
Danny freezes as Luke's screaming shouts cuts through the passageway. Danny begins to run before he realises he doesn't know where he's running to, so stops once more and shouts at the top of his voice.
Luke! Bro! Where are you?
A figure dressed in a filthy white gown moves quickly across the passageway, some 20 metres in the distance. The figure stops and turns, dark icy eyes staring at Danny before running off once more.
Hey, what the fuck?
Here! I'm here!
Danny turns away and moves towards the sound of Luke's voice. Luke continues to shout in order to guide his friend to where he's held captive. Dark room moments later. Danny bursts through the door into the room to find Luke strapped to the bed. He immediately goes over and, using the kitchen knife, begins to cut him free.
You alright? What the fuck's going on?
She's crazy. She's tried to rape me.
2 ropes cut, Danny starts slicing away at the ropes that hold his arms.
Who?
One arm free, Luke attempts to pull his trousers up.
Olivia.
Danny moves round and starts to cut at the final rope.
Who the fuck's Olivia?
Livy's mum.
This wasn't so fucked up, I'd fucking laugh.
His final limb free, Luke finishes pulling and buttoning his trousers. Danny puts his hand to his forehead as he tries to comprehend what's happened.
You think she was trying to fuck you to death?
Luke jumps off the bed.
This isn't a fucking joke, Dan. I'm not even sure Olivia exists.
What? Of course she does.
Well, I ain't fucking seen her yet. Just a fucked up mum. We've got to get out of here.
They hastily exit the room. Passageway, moments later.
Which way?
Danny shakes the kitchen knife in the direction he came from.
Psycho mom went that way, so if you want to go show she can't fuck with us.
No.
Oh, is little Lukey scared of big bad horny mama?
Luke punches Danny on the arm.
Can we just fucking go, please?
Touchy. Alright, this way.
They head down the passageway into the dimness.
You any idea where this leads?
I don't really care as long as it's away from here.
They come to a passageway junction. Left and right lead into pitch blackness. Straight ahead continues to be lit by the line of bulbs.
Any ideas, bro?
Straight ahead. At least we can see where we're going.
You hear that?
What?
Luke is searching through his pockets.
Like a buzzing noise.
Shit.
What?
She took my phone's and knife.
So what?
Danny pulls out the kitchen knife. Danny grins his familiar, endearing grin.
She turns up again. She gets this buried balls deep in her wrinkly ass.
It was a birthday present from Dad.
Oh, what? You serious, dude? We're stuck in the middle of fuck knows where and you're stressing about a birthday present.
I don't understand, though.
True that, bro. Look, let's save the Jeremy Kyle shit for another day. Yeah, you're right. We ought to get moving.
They continue to hurry along the passageway. The further they go, the more the floor is bricked and the walls are made of metal and wood sheeting. Soon they come to another junction, but this time the alternate route left is partially lit with strings of Christmas lights. A blue artificial light can just be made out at the end of the passageway to the right. They stop.
What now?
Don't ask me. I've got fuck all sense of direction.
Danny shrugs, then bends down and lays the knife on the floor.
What are you doing?
You got any better ideas?
Danny spins the knife on the ground. It stops, pointing to the left. He picks the knife up and takes the left passageway. Luke duly follows. A little way down the passageway, the boys come across a rotted wooden door in the wall. Danny stops and lays his ear at the door.
What are you doing?
Shh. Luke waits nervously behind his friend, looking around for any sign of anyone following them. Danny spins his head around slightly.
Come here, bro.
What?
Listen, you must hear that buzzing now.
Luke slides over and places his head against the door, and sure enough, a loud buzzing sound is clearly heard from behind the door.
Yeah? So what?
Luke steps back from the door.
Could be the way out, maybe, bro?
Luke quickly pulls at the door, which easily opens, and the buzzing sound loudens. Behind the door, a small and dark bricked room is scattered with broken furniture, dusty, unframed paintings, and general household junk. The buzzing comes from a large industrial freezer that stands in one corner. Danny enters the room.
Come on, what are you doing?
Luke follows Danny into the room.
Dan, why the fuck are you...
Danny lifts his hand up to halt Luke's words as he walks over to the freezer.
It's cool, bro. Just curious.
Danny pulls at the freezer door handle and light invades the darkness as its contents are revealed to him.
Oh, fuck.
Luke moves over towards Danny so he can see inside. On the freezer shelves, the frozen contents of human libs are neatly bagged up in see-through plastic bags. Arms, half legs, feet and hands sit upon one another in neat piles. Luke is stunned into silence as he stares at the white frosted head of a young man that returns his stare with terror reflected in its frozen wide eyes.
That's definitely our cue to leave, bro.
Danny backs towards the open door as Luke stands transfixed on the spot, unable to tear his eyes away from the young man's frozen head. Danny sees his friend's lack of movement, so walks back over to the freezer and pushes the door shut.
Let's get out of here.
Luke and Danny exit the room and continue down the passageway, which arcs round the left for 100 metres before a brick wall ahead denotes a dead end. The line of bulbs stops around 20 metres before the wall, and there's just enough light to notice a rusty oil drum that lies on its side near to the dead end.
What's that?
I wonder who he was.
Danny runs over to the metal drum and uses his foot to push it over to Luke.
Fuck knows. What I do know is I don't want to end up all carved up like that, poor motherfucker.
Danny then walks over to the brick wall, his focus on the wood-panelled ceiling ahead. Luke follows Danny's lead and looks towards the ceiling. Specks of sawdust fall from a small gap at the edge of one of the panels.
You thinking what I'm thinking?
Luke immediately pushes the oil drum to where Danny stands. Danny helps Luke to stand the drum up on end and then passes the kitchen knife to his friend. He jumps onto the drum, steadies himself, then reaches up and pushes at the wood panel. The panel easily gives way as a pile of sawdust falls onto him.
Don't know where it goes, but at least it's out of here.
Danny pushes the panel all the way over, leaving an exit hole easily big enough to climb through. He grabs hold of the frame that surrounds the hole and pushes himself up and through. Luke stares into the exit above, waiting for Danny to speak. A beam of light turns on to illuminate the hazy darkness.
Dan?
Luke jumps back as a small pig's head falls back through the black hole, hitting the oil drum on its way down and coming to a halt on the ground next to it. Danny's laughter echoes from the space up above, closely followed by his head popping through.
Very fucking funny.
Come on, bro, we're out of here.
Luke hops onto the drum, passes Danny the knife, then pulls himself up through the hole. Shed, moments later. Danny aims the torch on his phone at the hole in the floor where Luke exits the passageway. He wipes the sawdust from his face and hair.
Those passageways run all the way under the house, you think?
Sure looks like it. I remember as a kid there was always this crazy dude banging on about the mines and shit. Didn't realise it stretched as far as the Taylor house though.
It's not Taylor.
What?
It's Lucas. Her name, she told me her surname was Lucas. Olivia is a middle name and Virginia is a first name.
Are you shitting me?
I'm in no mood for bullshitting.
Fuck me. I wonder if it's the same person then.
Luke wanders over to where the dead pig's remains lay. He pokes one with the tip of his shoe.
Who knows? This is one messed up family though.
Danny moves over to the shed door and pushes it ajar slightly in order to look outside. He then turns to the set of drawers and pulls one drawer open. He places the kitchen knife on top of the drawers and takes out one of the photo frames and throws it over to Luke.
Who do you suppose that is then?
Luke inspects the framed picture of a baby.
Dunno.
Could be Livy, or Virginia, or whatever the fuck she's called.
Could also be anyone's kid.
Luke hands the photo frame back to Danny.
There's a load more of those photos in there, all babies.
They must be relatives or something.
Why?
They used to be hung in my house.
How'd you know that?
Danny replaces the frame in the drawer and closes it.
It doesn't matter. Listen, Dan, I really appreciate it.
What's that?
You, man, coming here and saving my fucking arse.
Hey, bro, you did the same thing for me, wouldn't you?
Of course I would.
Luke grins.
Sister from another mister.
Fuck you.
Rather not.
Well then, there you go. Brothers in arms.
They hug just as the light of Danny's mobile cuts out.
Shit, come on, let's go.
Danny replaces his phone in his pocket before quietly exiting the shed. Luke quickly follows. House, moments later. Luke and Danny exit from the side of the house and jog up to the Fiesta parked there. Danny pulls out the keys from his pocket, unlocks the doors, and they both jump in. Danny starts the car and accelerates. The vehicle jumps forward with a jolt before making a thudding noise that circulates from all around. Danny opens his door and looks out quickly.
Hang on.
Leaving the engine running, Danny jumps out the car. He circles the vehicle, stopping momentarily at each wheel arch, then pops his head back into the car.
You're not going to believe this.
Luke exits the car and looks at the punctured tyres.
Let's just fucking go.
Danny turns the engine off and locks the car doors. They begin to walk away when an exterior light attached to the front of the house turns on, illuminating everything within 50 metres. Luke and Danny instinctively duck down behind the side of the car as Olivia, now wearing a food-stained apron over her t-shirt and leggings, appears from the front door of the house, carrying a large axe. Luke takes a quick peek through the car's side windows as Olivia stops and scans the ground around her.
Shit.
Danny takes a quick look as Olivia starts to move past the house, heading down the driveway, then checks his pockets.
Where's the knife?
Thought you had it.
Must have left it. Come on.
Danny gestures to Luke to follow him and starts to slide around the front of the car. Luke follows his friend, keeping out of Olivia's vision. They move around to the opposite side of the car as Olivia disappears into the darkness of the grounds in front of them.
Now what?
Danny shrugs his shoulders.
The phone.
Mine's dead and she took yours, didn't she?
Yeah, but she said Livy rang her on a landline.
I thought you said Livy or Virginia or whatever the fuck she's called didn't exist.
If there's a chance we can find that phone, then what other choice do we have?
Go the other way?
Through the woods? Where to? You fancy getting lost in the middle of nowhere with her wielding that fucking axe around?
Your call, bro.
Danny slowly creeps away from the car and, keeping low, turns the handle on the front door and pushes it open. Luke quickly scuttles in, closing the door quietly behind him. Hallway, moments later. The outside lamp gives Luke and Danny enough light to see what they're doing, where they're going once inside.
I reckon the phone must be upstairs somewhere.
The ticking grandfather clock begins to chime loudly.
Go on then. I'm going to check out the kitchen.
The kitchen? What for?
I need a drink.
A drink?
Danny pulls on a gas face.
Seriously, bro, lighten up. I know you nearly got cornholed by a geriatric, but you still got to keep your sense of humour, man. Besides, you can sell that shit on Chatterbait for buco dollar these days.
It's not funny, man.
Look, if she comes back in here, I'm going to make sure I have something fucking dangerous to defend myself with.
Okay, I get it. Down there.
Luke points Danny in the direction of the kitchen, then ascends the stairs. Olivia's bedroom moments later. An old-fashioned panelled wood room decorated like the majority of rooms in the house, discoloured wallpaper and a carpeted floor that's seen better days. A handful of framed photographs hang on the walls, all of them showing different groups of young, smiling stoned hippies, a number of them with fires burning brightly in the background, along with some oil paintings, similar themes to the ones in the living room. A large unmade bed stands opposite a mirrored set of drawers on which an outdated laptop sits with a tarnished chair in front. Huge flannel curtains hang drawn in front of the large framed window that looks out over the house. Luke enters and immediately takes a peek through the curtains. No sign of Olivia. Locating the base of a hands-free telephone, but no handset. He looks around the room, noticing old photographs of groups of hippies, stoned and smiling, that hang on the wall. Luke searches the nearby drawers. Mixed amongst the mishmash of makeup and cheap jewellery, Luke sees his Swiss Army knife and mobile phone, the latter smashed and broken. He takes his knife and places it on the desktop drawer, then opens the laptop. The screen lights up but asks for a password to log on. He types in 12345. Wrong password flashes up. So he types in Olivia again. Wrong password. He types in babies. Wrong. Livy. Wrong. Luke once more goes and checks the window, but again no signs of anyone. Back over to the desk where he taps the keys quickly. Psycho. Wrong password. Then Virginia. And the sound from the laptop speakers denotes his access into the PC. The chat room page that pops up straight away confirms his fears as he stares silently at the last few messages on the screen. Livy. At Dad's, running late. Have asked Mother to meet you. Wait at mine. Sorry. Luke. sent you a message. Luke, where are you, Liv? Luke moves his finger over the pad and clicks on the message history tab. A list of names comes up. Johnny, Ross, Nathan, Charlie, Duke, Carl, Toby, Josh, Paul, Pete, Tom, Neil, Sammy, Joe, James. Luke scrolls down to see the ongoing list of male names, all conversations being held over the past few years, and all with the exact same last message sent. Livy, at Dad's, running late. Have asked Mother to meet you. Wait at mine. Sorry. The sound of smashing glass from downstairs pulls Luke's attention away from the laptop monitor. He hastily exits the room. Kitchen. A plain, well-kept kitchen with everything in its place, although the well-worn kitchen units themselves look more knocked up than fitted. Luke strides through the open door and into the darkness of the room.
Dan?
The dark shadow of Danny's silhouette, facing away from Luke and leaning against a worktop, mutters something incomprehensible. Danny slowly turns round, struggling to talk to his friend as he moves. The squelch of liquid spilling on the stone floor becomes apparent.
No, she...
She what?
Luke's words are silenced as he sees the huge bloody wound in the side of Danny's stomach, just under his right rib. Blood and intestines fall from the open gash as Danny continues trying to talk. Luke steps over to his friend, taking him in his arms as Danny pushes his head to Luke's ear.
She's here.
Luke spins Danny around just as the axe is brought down and buried into Danny's shoulder. Olivia stands motionless behind his friend, then grabs the axe handle and tries to pull it from the bone of Danny's shoulder blade. With a huge effort, Luke pushes Danny's body onto Olivia and they both collapse to the floor. Luke uses the moment to run out of the kitchen and over to the front door. He turns the handle, but it's locked, so he turns around and swiftly begins to ascend the stairs once more. Luke makes the upstairs landing before Olivia exits the kitchen, axe in hand. She stops in the middle of the hallway, scanning the empty space around. The ticking of the grandfather clock seems deafening in the silence of the house. Olivia walks into the living room. Olivia's bedroom, moments later. Luke runs into the room and grabs his Swiss Army knife, opening the largest blade apparent inside the device. He goes over to the window and tries to pull it open, but it's jammed shut. He tries to leave the window open using his knife, but the blade just snaps, so he pulls out the next largest blade.
Hide and seek is Virginia's favourite game.
With Olivia close by, Luke has no choice but to scramble underneath the bed. Just in time, as he sees Olivia's feet step into the room, Luke holds his breath for what seems like an eternity before he sees her feet retreat from the room.
I'll count to 10, then I'm coming. Ready or not?
As her voice trails away down the landing, Luke pulls himself around and his foot hits something plastic. He turns his head to see the telephone handset laying a few feet away, so reaches over and brings it to his face, switches it on and dials a number. The phone connects and is quickly picked up.
Hello?
Luke whispers into the handset.
Dad, it's me.
Luke, what's going on? I can hardly hear you.
She'll hear me if...
Who? Where are you?
Just listen. I'm at the old house on Boscombe Hill.
Your mum said Danny...
Danny's dead. She killed him, Dad. She killed them all. Help me, please.
Luke hears Olivia's footsteps approaching the bedroom.
Tell me when I'm getting warmer, won't you?
Luke hangs up and lays the footstep back on the floor. He listens intently as Olivia moves past the room and back down the stairs. Luke waits a moment longer, then drags himself out from underneath the bed. He moves over to the door and has a quick look out. Just able to see Olivia disappear from view. Knife in hand, Luke exits the room. Hallway, moments later. Luke creeps slowly out of the bedroom, watching the hallway intently for any sign of Olivia. No movement at all, so he silently steps down the staircase, his Swiss Army knife leading the way. Almost at the bottom, when he hears a sound from the kitchen, Luke squats down, looking through the stair rails and sees Olivia, minus the axe, scuttling backwards slowly, dragging Danny's lifeless body from the kitchen. Luke looks around the space, taking a moment to consider his options, then moves as quick as possible into the living room. Living room, moments later. Luke wastes no time and heads straight over to the patio doors that are still ajar and exits the house. Garden, moments later. Luke runs around to the front of the house, but is stopped dead in his tracks as the front door opens, forcing him to turn back. He runs back around to the rear of the house and surveys the countryside around him. The bright full moon illuminates the woods in the distance as a slight wind begins to blow the open shed door backwards and forwards. The scraping sound of Olivia pulling Danny's body across the gravel comes into earshot, so Luke quickly moves into the shed, pulling the door closed as he enters. Shed, moments later. Darkness doesn't allow much visibility in there. But as Luke knows the geography of the building, he walks straight over to where the entrance to the passageway is situated. The quickly rising wind outside howls through the shed's broken slats and once again blows open the shed door. Luke squats by the gaping black hole in the ground, plucking up the mental courage to re-enter the underground mines when he notices through a hole in the crumbling wood construction Olivia pulling his friend's body past the shed and in the direction of the woods. Luke allows her to get some distance away before returning to the shed door. He looks at the set of drawers near the exit and notices the kitchen knife lying on the surface, so folds up his Swiss Army knife, puts it in his pocket and picks up the kitchen knife and exits the shed. House, moments later. Luke runs from the side of the house past the cars and down the driveway. The large metal gates to the entrance are in sight when Danny's words vibrate in his head. Passageway, night, flashback. Danny raises the kitchen knife in front of Luke's face.
She turns up again. She gets this buried balls deep in her wrinkly ass.
House, moments later. The memory of their friendship stops Luke dead in his tracks. He looks down at the kitchen knife he grips tightly in his hand. Luke turns around and stares at the Ford Fiesta that sits motionless in front of the house, then turns his attention towards the woods. He takes a deep breath, then starts to run. Woods, night. The wind weaves its way through the trees, whistling tunelessly through the heavy branches, forcing a multitude of forest flora and fauna into Luke's pathway as he runs in the direction in which Olivia was heading. Due to the various densities of woodland, some patches of land are lit brightly by the strong moonlight, yet others are pitch black. A sense of duty pushes him on, more hoping than searching that he can avenge his friend's murder when he hears the sound of metal pounding against earth. Luke moves onwards to a shadow patch of woodland, weaving his way through the decaying trees until Olivia falls into his field of vision. He steadies himself behind a huge trunk and watches. Olivia is using a spade to dig a shallow grave into the ground. Danny's still frame is on the ground nearby. Olivia pulls Danny closer to his final resting place, the spade now perched in the mound of damp soil at the foot of the grave. Luke creeps a few trees closer, now only 20 feet away from her, and continues to watch Olivia attempting to bury his friend. As she pulls Danny's limp body into the grave, her back to Luke, he takes the opportunity to run at her, knife raised high in the air. She's too quick, and dropping Danny, snatches the spade and spins around, forcibly connecting with Luke's arm. Luke falls to the ground, the knife flying from his grasp and landing on the damp ground next to the open grave. Hurt but not beaten, Luke scrambles backwards, attempting to get to his feet as Olivia steps slowly towards him, gripping the spade in her hands.
You fuck. I'm gonna kill you.
Olivia, unemotional, offers no retort. Now stood above Luke, she raises the spade above her head, smiling crazily.
Livy's home.
Olivia falters for a moment, her eyes trying to make sense of something before the spade falls out of her grasp and she falls forward to the floor, the kitchen knife buried in her back. Stood behind her, Danny sways heavily from side to side, a bloody death dance in the wind, what's left of his drained body attempting to breathe before collapsing onto the ground. Luke pulls himself over to his friend as quickly as he can, his arms cradling Danny's head gently. He looks deeply into his saviour's eyes and the tears start to come as he attempts to communicate.
I'm so sorry.
Danny tries hard to keep his eyes open, shaking his head as he stutters his words.
Get away, bro.
I can't just leave you here.
Danny lifts his arm weakly, trying to push Luke away as Olivia makes a small murmuring sound where she lies. Danny shakes his head at Luke again.
Just fucking go.
Shouldn't have been like this.
Fresh blood runs from Danny's mouth as he closes his eyes.
Go.
Luke sees that there's no way back for his friend, so, picking up the spade that rests in the grass nearby, starts to run into the trees, into the night. Woods. Later. Luke keeps on running. Deeper and deeper into the forest, the fear inside of him overrules his weak and tired physicality, pushing him on in a confused state of disorientation. It seems like hours before his powerless legs force him to stop and fall to his knees on the wet grass below. Only then does he realise that he's lost in this open area of woodland. Luke lets the spade drop to the ground and a release of emotion comes quickly as tears streak down his mud-caked face. He falls against the nearest tree to rest for a moment, then uses his hand to wipe his eyes and look around. He sees nothing that could help him in terms of direction, but notices a number of large rocks spread around the area randomly. He slowly pulls himself to his feet once more and walks over to look at them. Kneeling down next to the rock, he brushes the dirt and debris away from it. He moves over to each rock, looking closely at them, some small enough to pick up, some too large and buried too deep into the earth. The ground appears softer near to the smaller rocks, and this softer ground is covered by more leaves and sticks. He walks back to where the spade lies and sits back down against the tree, moving his eyes from rock to rock, as he allows his body and mind a few moments of calm. Luke sees a straight-shaped piece of rock that protrudes from the earth opposite him. He grabs the spade and steps over to look more closely at it. He bends down and attempts to pull it away from the ground, but it's wedged too far in, so he uses the spade to dig it out. A few moments later, he wrestles the rock from the hardened soil. Luke knocks the earth away from it and lifts it into the air, using the moonlight to aid his inspection. He realizes that it isn't a piece of rock at all, but a bone. A small rib bone. Shed, night, flashback. Luke inspects the framed picture of a baby. Woods. Moments later, Luke tosses the rib to the ground in disgust, then falls to his knees and vomits violently. He's throwing out the contents of his stomach so loudly that he fails to hear the old man from the village who stepped out from the trees behind him.
You okay there, lad?
Luke almost jumps out of his skin, spinning around as quickly as his body will allow, and blindly reaching for the nearby spade as he stares up at the ponytailed, white-haired man. Luke stands up, grasping the spade as the old man raises his arms in defense.
Whoa there. I don't mean nothing. I just heard you being bad and thought you could do with some help. Here.
The old man removes a disgusting, threadbare and stained handkerchief from his jacket pocket and mimes dabbing his lips with it. He holds it out to Luke. Luke shuffles back a few inches, lowering his weapon slightly as he recognises the old man.
You?
The old man lowers his arms and takes a few steps closer. Luke raises the spade once more.
Didn't I tell you to stay away from the mines? Didn't I warn you?
Luke takes a few more steps backwards and walks into a tree.
Graveyards in the middle of the night, do you, boy?
Huh?
The old man nods down towards the ground.
I know what's been happening.
The old man lets out a throaty laugh as Luke edges around the tree behind him.
You know, do you? And what's that?
She's a fucking psycho. She murdered the babies.
As Luke stumbles further back between the trees, the old man moves over to where Luke was sick and picks up the piece of bone.
Who done what, lad?
That fucking crazy woman, Olivia.
The old man raises the bone to show Luke and starts to laugh once more. Luke nods his head in confirmation.
It's Piglet's bone, that is, son. My friends will tell you that.
From the trees behind, 3 more elderly people. Another man and 2 old ladies in their 60s and 70s. The man naked and ladies half naked, all with bodies semi-painted in bright colours, step out silently. One of the ladies starts to excite one of her nipples.
You need some good old titty, lad. Best meat on the market, this is.
Nipple lady lifts the large, saggy breast in offering as the others begin to laugh hysterically.
Tell him, will ya? Olivia kills pigs, don't you know?
Luke turns and runs through the trees as fast as he can. The laughter of the old man and his friends echoes through the woodland.
Olivia kills pigs.
Woods, moments later. Luke runs directionless through the trees. Soon he finds the trees around him getting fewer and fewer until at last he leaves the woods and finds himself in a large field. Luke stops and bends over, leaning on the spade in order to catch his breath. He looks up and sees nothing but the silver of the fields lit by the moon ahead of him, so turns around to see in the distance the imposing silhouette of Olivia's house. Behind him, laughter pierces the darkness. Luke looks back to see the now larger group of old people approaching. He grasps the spade and starts to run towards the house. Moments later. Luke runs round to the front of the house and he stops when he sees his dad's red car parked behind the Fiesta. All is silent and the front exterior light of the house is off.
Yes!
More confident now, he creeps slowly round to the front door and listens. Nothing but deadly silence, so he goes over to his dad's car and tries the driver's side door. Locked. He hears a noise from inside the house, so rushes over to the window and peers into the hallway just in time to see his parents disappear into the doorway behind the clock. He bangs his fist against the heavy glass.
Wait! Dad!
Still grasping the spade, Luke runs to the front door, but it's locked, so he heads back to the back of the house. Shed, moments later. Luke enters the shed and walks straight over to the open entrance to the passageway in the corner. He squats down, listens for a moment, then throws the spade into the hole before lowering himself into the darkness. Passageway, moments later. Luke drops down onto the rusted barrel that still sits on the ground. He jumps down, picks up the spade and jogs along the passageway. Following the rows of light bulbs, he moves deeper and deeper into the mines. Luke comes to the junction that's partially lit with strings of Christmas lights and stops. He hears a faded squeaking noise that's coming from the blue artificial light at the end of the passageway to his left. He follows the sound. The blue light shines from a doorless frame, crudely built to support the sheets of thin wood that surround it, making up a wall. This wall separating the passageway from a small makeshift room. Holding the spade, Luke enters the room. Blue room. Moments later. A blue bulb hanging across a broken timber, jammed in between two vertical timbers on either side of the room, casts a dull hue against a huge sheet of thick plastic that hangs from the ceiling at the back of the room. Behind the plastic sheeting burns the flames of many candles that spread a dancing shadow. Luke moves slowly up to the plastic, and Spade at the ready grabs one side and pulls it. The plastic falls to the floor, knocking over a dozen candles as it drops, revealing a decaying human cadaver, flesh and muscle stripped from its flame, its eyeless socket pointing towards Luke, mouth wide in anguish. Dry blood is crusted around the bony orifices of the skeleton's ribcage, in which lays a newly dead piglet, its body sliced from rump to head. A multitude of insects wallow in the blood that runs from the piglet's insides. Luke jumps back in disgust at the sound of a muffled female sobbing, which is heard from within the passageway outside of the room. Luke quickly exits. Passageway moments later. Luke runs through the lit passageway in the direction of the sound. It doesn't take long before he has to turn off the main passageway into relative darkness. Dark room moments later. The closer Luke gets to the sobbing, the more the light fades until he's in near complete darkness. He slows down to a walk, running his hand against the wall in order to feel his way forward. The sobbing trails off as his footsteps scrape along the muddy floor.
Hello?
No answer. He continues to shuffle forward, but his hand slides off the wall into dead air. Luke stops and attempts to make sense of the muffled words that are whispered close by.
Help.
Luke spins around in the direction of the clearly obstructed female voice, kicking something metallic as he turns.
Over here.
He follows the sound of the voice, then moves the spade to locate the top of a metal construction at his feet. He squats down, lays the spade on the ground, feeling the metal bars with his free hand. Luke slides his hand between the metal bars, feeling around inside until he touches the flesh of someone. He traces his hand upwards, running it along an arm, onto a shoulder, then a face. He carefully sweeps his hand around the face, feeling the material that's wrapped around the woman's mouth. He grasps the material and slides it over her chin.
Light. On floor.
Luke stretches his arm out and feels around the floor to locate a candle and matches. He lights the candle, its flame illuminating the room. Holding it, he stumbles to a standing position. A dozen rusty metal cages, 2 to 3 foot square in size, are scattered all around the huge brick room. Some are empty, but bundled inside the other cages are the bodies of dead men, in various states of decomposition. All the cages are padlocked shut. Luke turns round to face the woman in her 40s, her face bruised and dressed in nothing but a filthy white gown, locked in the cage.
She did this.
The woman stares silently at Luke.
Why didn't she kill you? She killed all the others. Why not you?
She's my mother.
Livy?
Luke drops to his knees. Placing the candle onto the floor in front of the cage, Livy jumps away from Luke as he grips the cage bars.
Don't be scared. I won't hurt you. You're...
Livy turns her head back to stare into Luke's eyes.
Not what you imagined.
Why?
He wanted a child. A boy to carry his name.
Your dad?
No.
Olivia's bedroom. Night. Flashback. The hippie, 40s, dressed in a hospital gown, hat, plastic gloves and mask, bends over Olivia in her 30s as she screams and gives birth to a crying baby.
She was carrying babies for him. He delivered them.
The hippie rips his mask off, the disappointment and anger obvious on his face, and leaves the room.
All girls.
Olivia takes a moment to catch her breath, then pulls herself over to lift the baby, still attached to the umbilical cord.
So they murdered them?
He beat her, tortured her, forced her to do it.
But he let you live.
She said she wouldn't do it anymore if he hurt me. But when she was too old to have anymore, he
raped you? Did she let him rape you?
No. He tried, but he couldn't.
Living room. Evening flashback. The hippie, 50s, holds Olivia, 40s, down on the leather settee. He violently shouts at her, Olivia shaking her head, screaming.
So he made her agree to get men here to... She had to agree to stop him from killing us both.
The man picks up a lit cigarette from an ashtray nearby and lowers it towards Olivia. She screams as the tip of the lit cigarette is buried in her skin. Dark room moments later. Luke steps over to the lifeless body in the nearest cage.
And when she's finished with them, she puts one in the freezer.
Luke gestures to the corpse in the cage. Livy starts to sob once more.
sorry.
My beautiful baby sisters.
I know where they're buried.
Livy controls her tears for a moment.
You buried them?
In the woods.
Can you take me?
What happened to him?
He hanged himself.
Is that him in that room?
She visits him, what's left of him, every day. Feeds him blood, does black magic, talks of resurrection, madness.
Your mother murdered my best friend today. And now my parents are here, looking for me.
Help me and I'll help you find them. I know this place. If she finds them...
She won't. She's dead.
Luke picks up the spade and jabs at the padlock hard. A few strokes and it snaps, dropping to the ground. Luke pulls the cage door open and helps Livy out. They exit the room. Passageway, moments later. Luke helps Livy along the darkened passageway.
This way.
They join the main corridor. Luke, carrying the spade, follows close behind her. They turn a corner and Livy suddenly stops. Luke stops too.
Listen.
The sound of multiple footsteps can be vaguely heard in the distance ahead of them.
Shit.
Your parents?
That's more than 2 people.
Who then?
The old people. They knew her.
The footsteps move closer.
Here.
Livy turns back and they both move into one of the dark passageways. They enter a room off the passageway. Dark room, moments later. Livy pushes the broken wooden door shut and the room descends into near blackness. The drip, drip of water falling onto the bricked wall echoes in the quiet space. Livy takes Luke's arm and leads him over to the metal frame bed that's positioned against the wall. Livy pulls Luke down until they're both seated on the bed's thin mattress. The footsteps move closer still. Luke rests the spade in between his legs and places his hands on the mattress, touching a piece of rope as he does.
I know this room.
Dark room, night, flashback. An eye looks through at Luke through a hole in the rotted wood of the door. Dark room, moments later. Livy rests her arm around Luke's shoulder.
Shh.
Luke grasps the piece of rope in his hand as Livy's hand moves up towards his face.
It's okay.
The rough skin of her hand gently brushes his cheek. Dark room, night, flashback. The rough skin of a hand brushing his cheek gently. Dark room, moments later. The sound of the footsteps outside the room come closer.
You said she couldn't conceive anymore.
Dark room, night, flashback. Luke moves his hips around, up and down, back and forth, attempting to interrupt the attention of his attacker. Dark room, moments later.
Why would she try?
Livy takes hold of the piece of rope as she pushes himself closer to him.
To fuck you?
Livy quickly jerks the piece of rope from Luke's hands and wraps it around his neck, pulling hard as he gasps for breath. Livy's lips are drawn back in an animalistic snarl. When she speaks, spittle flies from her mouth. Her tone is pure malice.
Does that feel good?
Luke struggles to pull the rope away from his neck.
Does it?
Luke's hand slides down in the direction of the spade as the footsteps march past the room in the passageway outside. Flickering flames of light coming through the hole in the door, illuminating Livy and Luke's faces.
I always questioned why they wanted a boy who would grow into a man.
Luke, unable to breathe, grasps the handle of the spade.
A man like him, like all men.
Luke brings the spade up to his waist and pulls the handle back as hard as he can into Livy's midriff. Her grip on the rope eases as she doubles over, giving Luke enough time to pull it away from his neck and push himself away from the bed. Grasping the spade in both hands, he turns towards Livy as she pulls herself up from the filthy ground. Luke swings the spade ferociously, connecting hard against the side of Livy's head. She collapses to the floor, blood trickling from the wound in her skull. Luke turns and moves over to the door, taking a quick look through the eye hole into the corridor outside. Although he can't hear the footsteps moving away, he can't see anything at all. He turns back around and, placing the spade against the wall, goes back over to where Livy lays. He pulls one end of the rope from the mattress and begins to tie it around Livy's wrists. Ceremonial room, night. A dirty and tattered oilcloth lays over the top end of a huge slab of granite that's situated in the centre of the room. On the drape stands a large rusted brass goblet, and around it a group of a dozen or so masked figures holding lanterns. The clothing and masks of the figures are made up of a bizarre mix of random mining paraphernalia mixed with the trappings of 70s hippie counterculture. Oxygen masks have been threaded with dried flowers and thorns. Heavy-duty boots have been decorated with brightly coloured symbols. Mining helmets have been adorned with pieces of broken coloured glass that glitter like jewels in the lamplight. We pass through the fire. Another masked figure steps slowly into the room from an alternate doorway holding a dead piglet. The masked figure places the animal on the stone slab, then steps back to the group. Passageway, moments later. Luke runs in the direction of the flickering torchlight that dances around the maze of passageways. He stops when he hears the repetition of a thumping sound from a small corridor nearby. Unsure what to do, Luke turns away from the light and instead turns down the corridor. He quickly reaches a dead end, or at least a wooden plank partition that's lodged into the corridor's wall to act as a dead end. The thumping sound starts again, definitely coming from behind the partition. Luke kicks fiercely at the damp, rotted wood, and it doesn't take long before it gives way, allowing dull green light through its newly formed entrance. He kicks a hole big enough to squeeze through, then climbs in. Green room, moments later. Luke pulls himself through the partition into the empty room. A set of green Christmas lights hangs limply on one side of the stone mud wall, illuminating nothing, as the now louder thumping sound continues to be heard. He walks slowly around the outer edge of the room, stopping at intervals with his ear up against the wall until he works out the closest point behind which the sound is loudest. Luke scrapes at the wall with his fingers, pulling small pieces of mud and stone away. Making no huge inroads into it, he stops, turns round and scrabbles back through the hole in the partition. Dark room, moments later. Luke rushes through the door, but is stopped in his tracks when he sees that Livy and the spade have gone. He moves around to the other side of the bed and picks up the candle holder that sits on the floor. Green room, moments later. Luke furiously scrapes at the wall with the base of the candle holder. This time he has more success and manages to dislodge enough of the wall to look through. The first thing he notices is the awful stench that escapes from the room on the other side. Luke steps back for a moment, covers his nose, then returns to look again. A lack of light in the room on the other side of the wall means he can't make out much, so he scrapes at it a little more to make the hole larger. He pushes his eye against the gap once more, leaving a little space for the green light to shine through. He jumps back, dropping the candle holder. As someone pushes their eye up to the hole from the other side, Luke slowly moves his head back closer to the hole again, a few inches now. A filthy hand pushes through and grabs hold of Luke's hair. He struggles, pulling at the hand until the grip of its putrid long fingernails lets go. Luke steps back as the hand retracts back through the hole. The girl's words make no sense. Luke looks at the chain of green lights on the opposite wall, then to the trail of wires that run into the ground. He goes over and on his hands and knees, gently fingers the soil from around it away. He pulls lightly at the cord and it moves a little. He scrapes more earth away, then pulls at the cord again. This time it comes away, bringing with it more cord. Luke pulls out enough to reach over to the other side of the room, then pulls the string of lights away from the wall. He moves back over to the hole and starts to feed the lights through. The string of lights is pulled through until it's almost completely dark in the room Luke stands in, and he pushes his eye to the hole once more. The malnutrition girl, 13, who grips the string of lights, wears a filthy gown, with long hair knotted and matted with dirt, her face withdrawn and yellowed. The girl drags her blistered bare feet around the space, dragging the lights with her, illuminating the large, collapsed and sick group of girls, 5 years old and upwards, that lay and sit all around. They all wear the same style gown, and while some look up for when the girl passes, most are unconscious or sleeping. Luke sees the piles of dried excrement and pools of blooded urine that decorate the muddy ground. One of the girls attempts to eat the shit on the floor, but pukes it back up immediately.
They didn't kill you. They locked you away until you were old enough.
The girl moves further around the room, and as she does, she illuminates scenes of horrifying cannibalism. 3 girls of varying ages fight over the scraggy meat from the body of another girl, and another smaller girl nearby eats at the hanging flesh and bare bones of her own arm. Luke pushes his hand to his mouth in repulsion. Somewhere behind him, the sound of voices interrupts this horror show, and Luke steps back from the wall. The girl on the other side moves once more, crazily looking eyes straining to see through the hole in the wall.
I'll come back. I promise.
Luke turns around and exits the dark room as the girl starts to scrape at the hole in the wall with her fingers. Dust and broken stone begins to fall away. Passageway, moments later. Luke scurries through the maze of passageways, heading down towards the dancing flames of fire that reflect against the damp stone wall at the top of the nearby passageway. Luke creeps slowly nearer to the torch-filled room. Ceremonial room, moments later. 4 other masked figures enter the room silently. Masked figure number 2 leading the group holds a large jewel-encrusted dagger, whilst the other 2 walk in a line behind the leader, holding masked figure 3 in their grasp. They stop at the head of the stone slab. We come together once again to celebrate the union of a new dawn. We call upon the dead. to offer our reality, dreams and all that lay in between, so that we may bring life to the lost and in this life provide a gateway to preserve the lineage of all that we once were and continue to be. Masked figure 2 steps forward. To live fully is to understand loss in its many forms. To understand loss is to give ourselves to the greater cause. By this we reflect the passing over of the blood of life. Masked figure 2 steps in front of the dead piglet that lays motionless on the stone slab, then raises the dagger. We give our blood to the earth. Masked figure 2 brings the dagger down to stab into the carcass of the animal, then pulls it out, allowing its blood to trickle from the open wound onto the stone slab. Masked figure 2 passes the dagger over to a member of the group, then nods at another member of the group that proceeds to pick up the goblet, using it to catch the growing trail of blood that runs from the pig's carcass and over the edge of the slab. Luke watches the ceremony curiously through the hole in the stone wall near to the passageway entrance to the room. With the goblet half full, the figure that holds it steps around to the head of the stone slab. It is time, this new day, we join together as one energy and freely accept our invitation to embark on our journey of creation. We join together. If there is any separation of darkness from light, make it known. Silence. Who has been chosen on this day of celebration? A masked figure stood behind the speaker is pushed forward by the ones that held him. Do you lay down all for him? Masked figure 3 doesn't respond. Then take your place in the garden of delight. It is our right. Masked figure 3 looks nervously around at the surrounding group before 4 of them move forward and force masked figure 3 down onto the stone slab, head on the oilcloth, holding a limb each with legs spread to the side of the dead piglet. Masked figure 2 moves to the opposite end of the slab and picks up the bloody animal carcass, then returns to stand above masked figure 3. We give to you. Masked figure 2 lifts and turns the piglet's flesh so that any remaining blood drips into the mouth hole of masked figure 3. The group pass the goblet full of warm blood between themselves, each taking a sip of the warm liquid. We take in. As the blood ceases to drip from the animal carcass, masked figure 2 throws it onto the floor nearby. The group begin to get delirious, chanting wildly as masked figure 2's words get louder. And as we do so, we pray our energy and lifeblood will create unto itself life, and so hold our destiny in its palms. The group, now worked up into a tortured state of mind, drop to their knees. To be fulfilled in the name of our Father, who himself gave his life for our cause, rejoice and celebrate our coming. The group begin to pray, mumbling words of worship quietly. Let us free our souls from the science of mankind and return to the seed of the earth. Masked figure 2 removes his robe to stand in all his age-naked glory at the head of the stone slab. Forever to the giving ground we bequeath our bodies. Through death we invoke life. Through death we invoke life. Masked figure 1 steps from the group and removes the mask of masked figure 3 to reveal the frightened-looking younger Livy, the girl from the photographs, her mouth gagged by tape. Masked figure 2 proceeds to pull apart the robe she wears.
No!
Sound and movement behind Luke as 2 masked figures seize him. Green room. Moments later, the string of green lights lay upon the stone and debris that's scattered on the floor underneath the large hole in the wall. The room beyond is empty. Ceremonial room. Later. Livy is removed from the stone slab and replaced by a struggling Luke, his limbs tied tightly to each corner as a mask is forced around his head. Shapes move hazily around in front of his vision before he's able to focus on the twisted masks that look down upon him. We give to you. Thick, warm liquid blood is poured into the mouth hole of the mask that wraps itself around his face before Luke is forced to cough out the pig's blood that runs into his mouth. He lifts his head to see that he's been stripped of his clothes, with only a folded sackcloth spread across his hips to cover his groin area. Masked figure 2 throws the remains of the dead piglet on the floor.
Where is she? What have you done to her?
The group pass the goblet between themselves, each taking a sip of its contents. We take in.
If you've hurt her, I swear I'll fucking kill you all.
The group begin to get delirious, chanting wildly as Mass Figure 2's words get louder. And as we do so, we pray that our energy and lifeblood will create unto itself life. Luke pulls his limbs hard against the ropes that hold him down, but once again his efforts are in vain. The group drop to their knees. To be fulfilled in the name of our Father.
It's a lie. Can't you see that? It's all a fucking lie.
The group begin to pray quietly. Rejoice and celebrate in our coming.
No one gave their life willingly. You stole it from them.
Mass Figure 2 glances down at Luke for a moment before continuing to address the group. Let us free our souls from the science of mankind.
You took all their lives against their will. That's why your plan is fucked.
Forever to the giving ground we bequeath our bodies. Mass Figure 1 steps from the group and removes Luke's mask.
You murdered them all.
Tears start to run down Luke's face as he attempts to come to terms with his fate. Mass Figure 2 turns to stare down at Luke, his words falling to a whisper. No, not all of them. Two of the group step forward and remove their masks to reveal Luke's mum and dad.
Mum. Dad?
Mum pushes her fingers against Luke's mouth.
Everything's going to be okay, darling. I promise.
What are you talking?
Mum covers Luke's mouth with her full hand.
Listen to your mother, won't you? She knows what's best.
Mass Figure 2 removes his mask. The old man gestures to the rest of the group and they remove their masks, revealing Nipple Lady and the group of aged hippies. Luke looks around, confused.
They killed Danny. They killed...
Dad grabs hold of his son's head and forces a piece of cloth into his mouth. Luke still attempts to talk, but to no avail.
It is time.
Mum and Dad step back into the group of hippies as Luke continues to struggle. Two more robed and masked figures, 4 and 5, enter the room and walk up to the bottom of the stone slab, stopping to face Luke.
Who has been chosen on this day of celebration?
Livy steps forward.
Do you lay down all for him?
Livy nods as Mass Figure 4 cuts the tape from around her mouth.
Then take your place in the Garden of Delight. It is our right.
Mass Figure 5 moves around to where Luke lays and removes the sackcloth from his body. Livy mounts the stone slab and climbs on top of Luke as he continues to struggle. Mass Figure 5 disrobes Livy gently as Luke looks up at the slight and fragile body of the girl who sits astride him. Mass Figure 5 removes her own mask to reveal Olivia. Mass Figure 4 removes her own mask to reveal Livy. Livy walks around to stand opposite her mother. Through death we invoke life. Through death we invoke life.
I'm sorry.
Through death we invoke life. Livy leans down to kiss Luke's full on the mouth as tears roll from his blood-encrusted eyes. Noise of running feet enter the room silences the chanting as Livy looks up to see the girls attacking the group, biting into their flesh like ravenous monsters. Livy uses this altercation to pull herself from Luke and using the dagger dropped by one of the group cuts him free.
Come on.
Livy pulls Luke from the stone slab and picking up a discarded robe each, they turn and run towards the exit. Luke stops for a moment and turns to see 2 small girls sinking their teeth into Mum's stomach while another 3 girls rip at Dad's neck. The malnutritioned girl pulls flesh from Olivia's scarred breasts, then looks up to give Luke a blood-stained smile before tucking into the meat. Livy takes Luke's hand.
We must go.
Luke and Livy make their escape. The screams and shouts of the other members of the group hold no sway as the group of girls easily overpower Livy, the old man, and the group of aged hippies. Exterior, house, morning. Like thunder accompanies the rain that begins to fall as 2 robed figures, Luke and Livy, run through the grounds away from the house and its many secrets therein. Mines, Blue Room, night. 1 year later. Livy's point of view as she moves towards, then pulls aside the plastic sheeting. Dressed in smart casual clothes, with her natural coloured hair cut visibly shorter, Livy looks crazily down at the fly-ridden rotten cadaver as she lays something down. She starts to cry.
Here, you bastard. It's a boy.
The baby, wrapped up in a sackcloth, lays contentedly inside the skeleton's decaying ribcage, his huge eyes reflecting the light from the candles that burn all around. Livy raises her hands to head in tears of madness, then heads back through the plastic sheeting and out of the room. The sounds of breathing impels her to turn slowly around. Her tears are quickly distinguished as the group of filthy, ravenous girls stands blocking her way. The girl at the head of the group looks up and smiles hungrily as the group quickly descend upon Lizzie. End credits. This exercise is to acknowledge that the script isn't in a finished state, and to get a better insight into where the changes need to be made. And I think both positive and any kind of criticisms are both equally welcome. Bits you like, characters you like, bits you didn't like, characters you didn't like. Anything is of value in this process. That includes all the tech crew as well. Yeah.
I'll go ahead. Do you know if the when the mom and dad get revealed in that sort of climax bit, is there anything? Do you think there's room for them to do anything potentially more striking upon that initial reveal? Because throughout the script, I think you've left hints that the mom and dad are involved in this sort of thing, and I think when the reveal is finally there, it'd be like really hard hitting for them to do something rather than just kind of like sort of being there. Perhaps they do something that you wouldn't.
There's certainly room for something.
Yeah,
something more shocking.
Something a bit more shocking to sort of go like, not only is it twisted that the mom and dad is there, but like they're actually really fucked.
But, like, I'm glad you've touched on that point. I mean, for the people who've just heard it for the first time, does that work for people, or is it too unbelievable that his own parents could actually be involved in something like that? I mean, I was always a bit iffy about it, whether people would go, it's a bit corny, isn't it, his parents kind of.
I sort of thought that I kind of needed just a few more kind of hints throughout the storyline.
So it wasn't clear enough, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, just I felt like their involvement in the whole thing wasn't very like it. I can see someone watching it and then seeing that come out of nowhere if they're not like, because not everyone's going to be paying like full attention to it, so it might be a bit almost jarring.
Would it? I'm thinking out loud here. Would more the parents be more involved in the initial setup? Because obviously Olivia is kind of key to setting up these encounters. If we revealed that it was his own parents that had set up the encounter, would that strengthen it?
Because you've got the dad actually asking about the girlfriend, and if there is a hint that he knows that his son's walking into that trap, so he's kind of got that maybe that foreknowledge or something.
Okay, definitely one for discussion. Any other kind of thoughts or observations? Come on, don't go shy now. we need.
I mean, I know, as I say, at the end, unless you're reading the script, it's difficult to kind of catch on what's going on with the Livy character, because there's actually two Livy characters. One's the one he first finds who's older, who he believes is Livy, but not at the age of the photograph. But then he finds out later on that he is actually a young Livy who he received the photograph at the beginning. So there's actually two, and it's not really clear from the read through that.
Yeah, and that was partly.
So that's kind of another twist.
The way we allocate those parts. So
I mean, is there anything? I mean, don't be afraid to speak up. What kind of stuck out as not believable, or any dialogue? What was kind of, I don't know, just didn't work, or was corny, or you know?
I was gonna say, 'cause I think I heard you mentioning like the text, like the chats, the messages, everything. I think with Danny's character, there might be a few too many like bros. I think there might have been a fan.
Right.
Yeah, that was his.
The fan was all me, dude.
Okay. I mean that text has already been highlighted as something that needs to be looked at a little bit.
I mean, one of the things I struggled with throughout this, and you know about this, Tom, is the element of comedy mixed with the horror. You know, how light-hearted would he be after seeing what he's seen? You know, if you find a load of cut-up limbs in a freezer, would you be still cracking jokes after it? I don't know. Maybe you would if you're kind of losing it to try and.
No, I think humour's a good defence mechanism. I don't think because you've got two very dual personalities there. You've got someone taking it very seriously and someone trying to. I don't think he's cracking too many jokes in my opinion. But
yeah, you think he's like you say, it's a defence mechanism.
Yeah. He seems like the kind of guy who uses irreverence as like a sort of coping mechanism. I don't know. Yeah. That's for me anyway. I don't know if everyone else says.
What is the topic of conversation?
Danny's sense of humour after experiencing all the horror.
I think maybe Danny just sort of admitting to Luke that, look, I'm just trying to cope with what the fuck is what I'm witnessing.
Yeah, that
might be like a little
Yeah.
justification of it.
It's difficult to know what you need to explain to an audience, isn't it? That's where the problem lies.
Yeah.
You know, you want to give them the information for why characters are acting like how they are, but then you don't want to give them too much. And
Bear in mind, it's what Danny's smoked a big doobie just before getting to the house.
Well, he has though, because
He has, yeah. So we have seen him. He
I think I'd make him more prammed out.
Yeah.
More than jokes.
Prammed
That
the fuck
shit.
maybe. Any other thoughts?
Just sticking on that, I mean, actually, really agree with what Leon says about defence mechanism. And again, it's a lot of stuff that could be done in performance. You know, if somebody's cracking joke but they've got a wild look in their eyes, you know they're scared and you know they're trying to deal with it. So I think, you know, that's something that is probably already there.
Did people feel because I do, but that you know, I'm very, very close to this. Did people feel a sense of loss? And I felt it worked with Danny's death. Did that kind of have meaning and weight to it?
I think it did.
Yeah?
I mean, I'll criticise myself. So I mean, it doesn't. On paper, it definitely does.
To be honest, that's the one main thing in the full thing I'm really happy with, the way their relationship builds.
Because I felt that had got the impact that was needed for that and actually that humour and that kind of charisma of Danny's character makes that loss even more kind of profound. That this Joker, this kid who just gets by, you know, wisecracking his way through it, it's now just gone forever. That for me, but this is more about you guys. Was the thing. Any other thoughts that people have got? Okay.
When Danny gets attacked by Olivia, he could be the one that pushes himself onto her instead of Luke pushing to do it.
Oh, so kind of sacrifices himself.
I do remember when I first.
Yeah, it's a bit of an arsehole move, wasn't it? You just
But maybe he knows he's already dead.
Yeah.
So
I quite like characters being arseholes. Like, I mean, it's like,
yeah,
you can't be good.
Again, for me though, it's finding that happy medium in keeping it real, and you know, there's that fine line, isn't there? You know,
always.
Between what works for me anyway, what works and what doesn't work in terms of the amount of comedy coming in, and the fine balance of the relationship, what you believe one person would do and one person wouldn't do. And it's a difficult thing, and I suppose that's exactly even when a film's made, they do, you know, preview screenings to find out what should be removed, if anything. It's useful, isn't it? But it's nice if you can actually get it at this stage to a point.
to be honest, Luke pushing it does seem like a little contradictory to like their friendship, I guess.
I don't know. Possibly. It's
It's
certainly a point to consider, though, isn't it? I mean,
yeah.
We'll have a look at that one as well. What about the sort of more the level of there's a number of deliberately quite provocative and controversial scenes in there, and like always there's a fine line between creating a sense of horror and revulsion and just kind of that Eli Roth over the topness. Do people feel that the sort of level, those moments that are quite transgressive, so we got aged hippies, topless hippies in there, had that kind of right level of that's just kind of fucked up, rather than
I thought it was a good level.
Yeah.
Good level of fucked up. Yeah.
I enjoyed it because they didn't seem to take themselves too seriously as well. Like they
best meat on the market.
they kind of found that, they kind of found the situation almost amusing to them. So it's such a horrifying situation to the rest of the audience, which makes it scarier that it's such a, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, in my mind,
Very cool and collective.
50 years of doing acid is going to...
Well, yeah, I mean, you know, you have to kind of sway some kind of, give yourself some play, don't you, in terms of what, otherwise you wouldn't really have a captivating story if you didn't kind of push the fantasy element and things like that, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you just look at certain scenes in, like, The Shining, for example, with the old woman, and, you know, there's scenes which, for me, stay with you forever, you know? I dare say that film could work without that, but, you know, it's just that little small... I don't know, I mean, I'm not... Having listened to it through, I think it works, to be honest. You know, I don't think it's overwrought, you know?
No, I agree with like these sort of raunchy eroticism and like horror kind of, I don't know, fear and sexuality kind of tiptoe the line together. I think if you put sexuality into a horrific sense, I think it's like quite scary actually. You know what I mean? Very very uncomfortable, but like in the intended way, I think.
Awesome. Well, listen, go on.
Sorry, I was just going to say that it's my one small niggle.
No, go ahead.
That's all right.
Of course. Yeah.
When they were back to the car, obviously they got punctured tyres and stuff like that. For me personally, I didn't, and I don't know whether it's just that whole horror thing of like, no, just fucking run away. But they didn't seem like, the going back for the phone didn't seem like enough of a reason for them to put their lives in jeopardy again.
Right.
And because like you've got like two directions, they can either just go out into the woods and run, or they can go back into the house where the danger is. But just thinking about it now, it could be that, you know, it's winter and they're in the middle of nowhere, so they can either go out and freeze to death, or. But do you see what I mean? It's either something that stops them going back out, or something stronger to drive them back in.
Yeah.
That's quite.
Again, no, it's a difficult one, isn't it? Because, you know, you look at many films and read many stories, and you think, well, why would that?
Well, that's it. It's the whole horror thing where
it
every
is,
time you watch it, you're just going, just run away.
Let's go back into the cellar.
And then the film would finish there, wouldn't it?
Exactly. Yeah.
You know,
but something environmental that prevents that, or makes that outside environment much more threatening. Yeah, at the moment it's threatening because it's disorientating. You get lost in it, but maybe something that just ups the ante.
Well, I think the reason why they go back into the house mainly is because Olivia goes the way they were going to go initially. You know what I mean? So obviously they're not going to go that way anymore. So it's kind of into the woods. Well, we don't know the woods, or into the house where we think there's a phone. That was the reason for driving it.
Cool.
But if you think that's too corny, then certainly look at it.
Is Danny part? You know how Luke's mum calls. Is it Luke's mum phones Danny? Is Danny part of the plan?
No.
So I'm wondering why. I was just confused, like.
Just because they're best friends, I suppose.
What isn't Luke's mum is? So she just. Why would she want to?
Yeah, I see what you mean. Yeah. Why would she send someone to save him if they were trying to get him in there? That could work.
Is there another motive towards that, like, or is she trying to save him?
Perhaps she's also involved. Perhaps she's also involved with Olivia's messages somehow, because Dan was messaging Luke. So if the mom caught wind of that, perhaps that would be a reason for him to send him there as well. Send him over, to get him. Yeah. Send him to die, just get rid of him. Sort of thing.
That's I've not thought along that.
You might need to connect that.
It's an interesting question. I'm not. Again, for me, it comes down to that balance between kind of passing over the information about his parents, how much you're going to tell them about their part in it early, or certainly in the first half of the story. You know, is it enough? Is it not enough? You know, do you make them darker or?
Why do they? Because everyone else in the cult sort of seems to live in the village. How come they don't? Okay.
Middle class.
Okay.
Property got too expensive. These rural retreats that just.
No, again, you know, You're right, yeah, you're right in asking them questions. And I'm sure there would be many more if you kind of comb through it as to why this and why that. You know, you either have to rewrite the full thing or add, you know, and let some suspension of disbelief in there.
I think, yeah,
to a
I think
point.
that's probably the answer on it.